Join us this new year for new conversations at the Commonwealth Club.
Good evening, everyone. And my name is Scott Rozelle. I'm a professor of economics in the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies and at Stanford University. I'm a Cal grad, so I cover both sides of our bay. I'm going to be moderator for the meeting for this program this evening, and I really want to thank you for joining us. It's my pleasure to extend this special welcome to any new club members who are watching and invite everyone to visit the club on the website at www.commonwealthclub.org. And, it's a tough time out here. And so they really want you to consider a donation to the club in this sort of uncertainty. With your financial contributions, they continue to do these types of programs and more. So this program today is presented by the club's Asia Pacific Affairs Membership-Led Forum. So it's thank you. And they've been getting us ready to go. They've been just absolutely terrific. We encourage you during the presentations, after the presentations, the listening audience to give us questions, give us comments. We really want to hear from you. And so just write them in the YouTube text chat window right next to where you're on your streaming channel, and we'll get to as many of them as possible. With Sean and Lewis here, you got questions, they'll try to give you answers. So now it's my privilege and pleasure to ask you to join me in welcoming our speakers, our panelists, our Sean Randolph and Louis Chan. Today, we'll be discussing China's Greater Bay Area and our Bay Area. Can we collaborate? And of course, in this time of U.S.-China tension, in this time of recovering from COVID, in this time of the 21st century, as we're trying to develop and move forward, collaboration and working together is such an important part of it. And I've had a chance to talk to both of them in preparation of this, and I think the messages that they're going to give are very important and informative. So stay tuned for that. I'm just going to give you a very, very brief introduction for both of the speakers. In your program, there's a long bio. You could fill up half a book with their former activities and titles. But the first speaker is going to be Sean Randolph. He's the Senior Director of the Bay Area Council of Economic Institute. And it's a wide-reaching institute that has connections inside China, in Hong Kong, in the greater southern Bay Area of China, and in our Bay Area. So, Sean, why don't you go and I'll introduce you, Louis, right before you give your talk, okay?
I want to say thank you very much, Scott, and thanks to everybody for joining us. This is a really interesting topic, and as Scott mentioned, it's a rather challenging time in U.S.-China relations. There are a lot of issues on the table bilaterally, and more seem to be added all the time. And in that environment, it's particularly important that we look for opportunities to work together, especially in the business field, especially at the subnational level. And the Greater Bay Area of Southern China may provide one landscape with opportunities for us, in fact, to work together. I was privileged earlier this year to work with the Hong Kong Trade Development Council on a report which aimed to interpret this plan in China for Bay Area and U.S. audiences, to help them understand what the structure, what the intent is of the Greater Bay Area plan, and what it may mean for companies here in the Bay Area, California, and Silicon Valley. So I'll give a short presentation that will hit the high points of that plan, before we go on to our discussion. So first of all, it's a national strategy of China. It is deeply embedded now in China's policy and planning documents and has the support of China's central government. There are other bay areas in China that might in the future receive similar designation. There's Hangzhou Bay, which is near Shanghai. There's in northern China, the area around Tianjin and Dalian, Bohai Bay, but they don't have the official status that the China Bay Area does in southern China. So that's where we're going to focus. The idea, if you go back to the origins, is loosely modeled, in fact, on the San Francisco Bay Area, which is a multi-jurisdictional integrated economy, a regional economy that is very global and that uniquely in the world concentrates innovation and production assets to be really the premier global center for technology and innovation. And these are things that China would like to replicate. And one pathway, of course, is to be able to connect and collaborate between the greater Bay Area of China and our San Francisco Bay Area. And I think the focus on southern China builds on that region. Really, it's the Pearl River Delta that we all know, on its historical role as a trading zone for China. It was really the first place in China that opened up for trade with the West, and it has since then been really the foremost grounds in China for pursuing economic reform. And here you can see, if we go back to those days, early trading days in Canton, what were called the factories, the trading houses in Canton, and the waterfront today, just a little bit of change since then. So strategically, and there is definitely a strategy behind this, the idea is to connect and integrate the economies of Hong Kong and Macau, the special administrative regions, with 9 cities in adjacent Guangdong province. So again, basically ringing the Pearl River Delta. Each one of these jurisdictions has unique assets. And the idea is to build on and leverage those assets and then connect them. And considering that Hong Kong is part of that, as is Macau, to sort of deepen the implementation of the one country, two systems under which Hong Kong has been operating for decades now. So part of this relates to the deeper economic integration of Hong Kong into China, but especially with the surrounding and complementary economies in the Pearl River Delta. And there's a global aspect of this. As I mentioned, I think the San Francisco Bay Area is seen as a global center for technology and innovation, and China would like to see the China Bay Area also be a global platform for technology and innovation, and of course, a point of global connection for China. So there's the map, and we can see it. We've got Hong Kong there, Hong Kong opposite that, and then Guangdong province surrounding that, Shenzhen, the special administrative region just across from Hong Kong. And you can see the cities there, the core cities that are a part of the region in Guangdong province. So what strategies is China following to implement this? And I have to say, I've spoken going back 7 or 8 years at several conferences in China. I was asked to speak on the topic, and I didn't quite understand it then. It's matured a lot since then. So I think we have the outline of what China is putting into this package. So at its base is infrastructure. Lots of investment is going into roadway, airport, light rail, bridges, all kinds of infrastructure projects that will physically integrate the region more than it is today and make the movement of both goods, because it's a major trading and manufacturing area, as well as people for services and other purposes, more efficient. Part of that involves, of course, new construction of infrastructure. Part of it also involves regulatory and economic incentives, regulatory changes that will allow both financial capital and people to move more freely within the region. And we will come back to this in just a few moments. And then the third major component is a significant infrastructure into the investment into the scientific research infrastructure of the region to help develop and enhance existing research clusters, help create new clusters, really to anchor the Greater Bay Area more firmly in the map of global innovation. So a lot of this is about linking and connecting, because all this is already there. There's new investment in connecting things, but you have major assets that are in place. So we think the core cities, 3 core cities, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, next door, and Guangzhou. So the idea is to link these cities and then link other node cities, other major cities, the 9 in Guangdong province with them. So this involves, most importantly, a deeper connection of Hong Kong and Shenzhen, which border each other, Guangzhou and Foshan, and Macau and Zhuhai. And these are both all cities that are proximate to each other. Part of that, going back to the one country, two systems policy, is to deepen the connection of Hong Kong's economy and its deeper integration with the mainland's economy. And then there are specific urban zones that are points of concentration. So there's the Shenzhen-Qinghai Free Trade Zone, and that's an area that's targeted for development of service industries. And of course, Shenzhen is a very strong service area already. There's the Guangzhou-Nansha new area, and that's really focused on finance and logistics that relate to trade. And then there's Zhuhai-Hengjin Free Trade Zone, that's Macau, and linked with Macau, which is already a tourism center. So they want to build on tourism and e-commerce, logistics, but there are a lot of natural areas next door to Macau. So there's sort of a tourism echo theme around what would happen in that particular zone. So you can see a lot of infrastructure here. All these cities are incredibly impressive. The bridges being built or that are in place. And as I mentioned, science and research investment is an important part of this. So you have the Hong Kong Science Park in place already, with initiatives developing now around healthcare and biotech through their Hong Kong initiative, and also their Air Hong Kong initiative, which focuses on artificial intelligence. So the Hong Kong Science Park, part of that in Hong Kong. But beyond that, you also have the Hong Kong Shenzhen Innovation and Technology Park, which is a new facility on the border of Hong Kong and Shenzhen that's designed to benefit from the access of both. So jurisdictionally within Hong Kong, with all the assets that has, but enabling easy movement of people back and forth into Shenzhen, and sort of access to the research and also the manufacturing and other activity in Shenzhen. So that's going to be a major development. Also, you have the Guangzhou AI and Digital Economy Pilot Zone. You have in Shenzhen an area around robotics. So these are all significant long-term investments that are being made into the R&D infrastructure of the region. There's also some interesting regulatory experimenting going on. And again, the idea being to reduce the friction and increase the ease of movement of people and capital and business across these different jurisdictional borders. And just remember the Bay Area, we have a lot of jurisdictions, and counties don't always work so closely together here. Well, here you have rather bigger and different jurisdictions that also have regulatory differences. So things like the development of small business permits that will enable small business to operate cross-border, personal bank accounts in dual currencies, shared driver's license. This is pretty simple stuff at one level, but you can imagine how difficult it would be for us here. But these are the kinds of things around ease of personal movement that are being looked at now. And I think that China is looking at the Greater Bay Area in southern China as a prototype for what could happen in the other regions that they call Bay Areas in China. So again, the Hangzhou Bay, Bohai Bay, not as developed as this, but whatever works or doesn't work in the Greater Bay Area in southern China will be used to inform what China does in these other incipient Bay Area regions. So Hong Kong has a pretty unique part of this. It's already a major Asia-Pacific headquarters for multinational companies. It's already a major international business service center, the leading financial center in Asia, one of the leading ones in the world, huge center for renminbi financing, major location now for IPOs. One of the things that really carves it out, and I think makes the China Greater Bay Area in southern China different from whatever may happen elsewhere in China, is Hong Kong's common law system, with the focus on respect for contracts, respect for intellectual property, a very well-established commercial dispute settlement process that makes it a comfortable place for global businesses doing business with China. It also has highly respected universities, as we were pointing out earlier, some well-developed R&D infrastructure. And it's also, looking in the other direction, a well-established platform for companies from overseas that are doing business in China, but also for Chinese companies moving outward into the Asia Pacific and the global economy. So really a platform moving in both directions toward the Greater Bay Area and out of the Greater Bay Area within the Asia Pacific region. So there are still a lot of questions around this. It's pretty early days. The investment is being made. It has high level support from the Chinese government. The questions are, will the whole be more than the sum of the parts? The Pearl River Delta has been there for a long time as an economic region. I can think 20 years ago, when people spoke about kind of global mega regions, the Pearl River Delta was one of those. So will the Greater Bay Area be more than that? It is really interesting because it integrates so many things. It integrates the manufacturing capacity, which is enormous. You could say that Guangdong province is really kind of the world's manufacturing center. That capacity is there. You've got the tech and the entrepreneurial activity, especially concentrated in Shenzhen with many large tech companies. And then you have the common law environment, and Hong Kong is a major financial center. So that's a pretty unique combination that makes it, I think, very significant and interesting for overseas partners. The one variable that I think we have to be aware of and keep an eye on is, the changing political environment in Hong Kong and the national security law, which I think has put Hong Kong under a bit more of a microscope vis-a-vis its relationship with China and the business conditions in Hong Kong. And I think that also sort of affects the environment for collaboration of U.S. companies in the Greater Bay Area. So I think that's something to keep in the background. I think the bottom line, looking at the San Francisco Bay Area and our opportunity here is we have really historic ties with Hong Kong and with Guangdong province. Most of the Chinese immigration into our region came from Guangdong province, so there's deep family ties. If you look at the similarities, Hong Kong, we're both very open economies. We're both major service centers. Both of us are anchors, economic anchors for our region, and we're both highly globalized economies. I think the technology options for collaboration in the Greater Bay Area, and this sort of goes back to the reality of the political environment these days, are being constrained at the moment by U.S.-China politics, U.S.-China relations. And I think even though I think the issues are real and we need to be aware of them, there's no indication at this time that the fundamental environment for doing business in Hong Kong has changed. And I think Hong Kong's role as a global financial center is as strong as ever. So I think Hong Kong continues to present a unique platform for engaging with the Greater China Bay Area. I think we just need to acknowledge that that is taking place within a larger environment that's challenging, I think, for those of us who would like to see more collaboration with the region. So we did look at what fields are perhaps most promising for investment, for collaboration, where it's less likely to run into some of those political obstacles, but fields that are priorities for us here and in the China Bay Area. And there were quite a few of those. One being climate change that can include technology. It can include planning around how do you adapt to sea level rise. We're both right on the water. Clean renewable energy, healthcare. We both have challenges there. We both have aging populations. Mobility around electrical and autonomous vehicles, biomedicine, pharmaceutical, fintech, of course, we're a huge fintech center, and so is Hong Kong. So there may be other fields. There are, I'm certain, for collaboration, but we felt that those were promising fields to start with. Again, the potential unique concentration in the entire world in the China Bay Area for manufacturing, combined with the tech, combined with global services, strong financial system in Hong Kong, strong legal system around commerce. I think those things in Hong Kong really distinguish China's Bay Area from any other ones. Political certainties are there. Whatever happens, I think, with the overall plan, there will be a long-term legacy of China's investment in science, its investment in infrastructure in the region, which I think will continue to enable the region to continue to grow, and across those jurisdictions present potentially strong opportunities for collaboration with us here in the San Francisco Bay Area, but California and across the US. So there we are. Hong Kong, it looks a lot like San Francisco when you look from the water's level, and the similarities don't stop there. So that is the end of my presentation. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Scott to continue our program.
Okay. Good. Sean, that was fantastic. Very, very interesting. I'm an economist that's worked on China for 40 years and have gone in and out of that area. And I always thought the greater Bay Area was infrastructure. But I think from your talk, I see that it's ideas, it's people, it's technology that's bringing this area tighter and tighter together. And obviously, like you said, the promises of collaboration, we have challenges. We know there's challenges, but the promise of collaboration, even in just the number of fields of climate change and clean energy and biomedicine, fintech, can bring, I think, not only us together to work together, but that it can bring prosperity to the regions and to the whole world. So thank you. That was very, very good. What I'm going to do now is introduce you to our second speaker, Louis Chan. And I had a chance to meet Louis a few weeks ago and prep for this. And then I've done all the background reading on him, and he's quite the guy, and has done a lot for the Hong Kong Trade Development Council. He's a principal economist. He leads the global research team, and he's going to dig even deeper into the China Greater Bay Area, and I think trigger a lot of discussion here. So, Louis, it's all yours.
So thank you very much, Scott. Good day, friends in the United States. This is Louis Chan of HKDC Research. It's really a pleasure to know that there is a growing interest in Bay-to-Bay collaboration, and that there are more and more GBA-themed events gathering friends in the United States and around the world. Now, in order for me not to repeat what Sean has just shared in his presentation, and more importantly, what he had put down earlier this year in our joint research project reports, today I would like to take a few minutes to walk you all through a newly launched business support program called GBA Go GBA, which is developed by the Hong Kong Trade Development Council and dedicated to be a one-stop support platform for Hong Kong and international entrepreneurs doing business in the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area. As some of you might already know, the HKTDC is a statutory body established in 1966 to promote, assist, and develop Hong Kong's trade. We have 50 offices globally, including 3 in the United States and 13 in mainland China. The HKTDC promote Hong Kong as a two-way global investment and business hub. Now, to facilitate the venture into the GBA of Hong Kong companies and companies based in Hong Kong, including US companies, we have adopted a total solution approach to provide timely GBA intelligence and support. Just in last June, we launched the Go GBA one-stop platform. Let me show you a short video about the program.
The Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area is mainland China's key development strategy. As part of the mainland's 14th five-year plan, which promotes dual circulation, the Greater Bay Area offers unprecedented opportunities for business. In line with the 2020 policy address of the Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, the Hong Kong Trade Development Council has launched Go GBA, a one-stop platform to help Hong Kong companies capture Greater Bay Area business opportunities. The new Go GBA WeChat mini program is a digital platform offering practical tools for cross-border business and timely information to facilitate business in the Greater Bay Area. With 50 offices globally, including 13 in mainland China, the HKTDC has strengthened support for SMEs in the Greater Bay Area by setting up the HKTDC GBA Center in Shanghai and Go GBA Business Support Centers in multiple Greater Bay Area cities, offering an even more comprehensive service network. The Go GBA one-stop platform offers a wide array of activities to help you develop and expand in the Greater Bay Area. Go GBA offers workshops and a business advisory service to help you better understand market trends. The platform offers market visits for SMEs to experience, understand, and expand into the Greater Bay Area. The platform encourages Greater Bay Area enterprises to leverage Hong Kong's services to go global. The Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area. New opportunities, new energy, new journey. Go GBA one-stop platform helping you navigate Greater Bay Area opportunities.
So thank you. As the video showed, the Go GBA one-stop program covers 3 major sources of services. A key component includes a digital platform comprising of the Go GBA mini program and website to empower people to do cross-boundary business across the GBA with timely information and policy updates as well as practical tools. It goes without saying that my department, HKTDC Research, will continue to be an essential source of information, providing free of charge the latest market intelligence, authoritative research for Hong Kong businesses doing business in the GBA and around the world. The HKTDC GBA Center and Go GBA Business Support, on the other hand, will provide advisory and training to any enterprising entrepreneurs who would like to do or expand their business in the global in the Greater Bay Area. And HKTDC online and offline activities will offer networking opportunities for companies to explore a business opportunity in the region. Now, just to give you a more concrete idea, we HKTDC organize more than 30 industry fairs and conferences every year locally. These offer excellent opportunities for companies to find contacts and feel comfortable the market for themselves from Hong Kong. With the clear potential of the Greater Bay Area development, we encourage US companies to leverage Hong Kong and our Go GBA one-stop platform to tap opportunities in the region. And we at HKTDC, especially our great teams based in Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, are ready and willing to work with you to take full advantage of the opportunities. So with that said, thank you very much for your time. And thank you very much again, the Commonwealth Club of California, for having me in today.
Thank you, Louis and Sean, both of you. Thank you very much. That was great. And I'm going to take the prerogative of the chair and ask a couple questions. We just heard Louis, so let me start with you, Louis. I found your Go GBA one-stop platform very, very interesting. And like the greater Bay Area that we live in here, it's clear that small businesses are one of the real drivers of business investment, technological breakthroughs, right? At Stanford, our students, they want to go to those small businesses, sometimes much bigger than the bigger ones, that there's just lots of potential there. Now, I'm assuming since you spent so much time, so much effort, which is totally worth it, creating this Go GBA platform that the council has done, that at least some of the time in the past, you believed that one of the barriers to these small firms to make it, right, to move out, to create new technologies, to spread across the entire Bay Area, was that they needed more information, more intelligence, more access to networks, all of those many, many, many things that is in the GBA, Go GBA platform. So my question to you, Louis, is that besides the constraints that you were addressing with this one-stop platform, what other constraints are facing SMEs in Hong Kong and in the rest of the GBA? Is it access to finance, human resources, a legal system that treats small and large businesses equally? Others, is there anything that you guys might want to do then to help in these matters, or is that for the other guys? So, what do you think?
No, we actually conduct a survey and in-depth company interviews with more than 250 local startups in the middle of last year to better understand, and identify both the growth opportunities and barriers, among them in the GBA. And the findings were quite interesting. 43% of respondents said the different institutional systems, including tax and legal there, still hinder their expansion plans. Mm-hmm. And as companies have to devote extra resources to understanding and aligning with mainland business practices and workflows, they are often put off interesting projects because they just don't have enough resources to do so. So this is also one of the principal reasons why we have put our one-stop platform in place, just to help them or to give them some opportunities with ease. And other 40% were also concerned about uncertain market conditions. During some of the company interviews, it became clear that some believe that mainland government policies can be easily subject to change, and which explain why they were, among the startups, they were not too keen about developing their business in the GBA from the beginning or from the onset of their business. Moreover, some local startups moving into the GBA have to deal with cultural differences, which not only affect their daily communications with customers and staff, but also their ways and means of doing business. But just to give you an example, one of the difficulties encountered by many companies when doing their marketing in the mainland is that it's about the access to social media. Facebook and Instagram are widely used in Hong Kong. But on the mainland, WeChat and the little web blog, Xiaohongshu, are much more common marketing channels. So you have to shift, to the other platforms in order to get your marketing message and techniques through. If you really want to develop a long-term business across the border. Another barrier to doing business in the GBA market mentioned by another 1/3 of the respondents is the lack of reliable market information, which increases their worry about the lack of certainty of market conditions in the mainland. But of course, having said that, while they encounter a number of barriers when trying to begin operating in the GBA, we still found that quite a number of them, according both to the survey and company interview results, if they can really find the market niche and conform to the overall development directions, and they do find very obvious advantages. Some notable examples include just like example Sean mentioned in his presentation concerning the biotechnology and healthcare sector. And we have seen that many people talk about the differences of qualification recognition and medicine registration legislation between Hong Kong and the rest of the GBA. But we have already seen some forerunners, including, for example, the Hong Kong Medical and Healthcare Device Industries Association. They are trying to lobby the Hong Kong government to negotiate with GBA governments on integrating the relevant rules and regulations in future. So in case there are some new laws regarding some new drugs, to be used, both in Hong Kong and the rest of the GBA, then they will have more common or harmonized legislations to take care of the drug registration and so on. And another example is regarding some business, they are subject to import regulations. So these companies they're advised to set up their factories or manufacturing facilities in any of the GBA cities to benefit the unfettered access to the mainland market as a whole. So we have seen some companies, they're invited by GBA governments, different city governments to set up, for example, aquaponics farming plants, in GBA, in order to sell, tariff-free and market access-free to the rest of the GBA and also the rest of the mainland Chinese market. And, at the end of the day, a company's ability to succeed really depends on how well they are on the pulse of the market. So there are definitely new market niches, developing or emerging, not just in Hong Kong or in Macau or in the Greater Bay Area, but also in the rest of the mainland China market. But we happen to see that Hong Kong, and we strongly believe that Hong Kong remains a very good gateway or springboard for you to test your idea before entering the gigantic Chinese market. And the GBA just offer a very good test bed for you to not just test your report, but also the resilience of your project, in a city like Hong Kong, and with the financial strength and the market infrastructure, and also the market size just right after or across the border. So thank you very much. Over to you, Scott.
Yeah, so it's very clear from listening is that the Hong Kong Trade and Development Council does a lot more than Go GBA, and that firms do have many different challenges, I would say, to try to spread business between Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area out to the rest of the world and out the rest of China, but that. And you guys do a lot to overcome those constraints, but it's clear that there's other constraints that maybe are out of your control or that need to be addressed in other ways. So let me turn back to Sean, for a second. I kept hearing, the challenges of going into China, of going in through Hong Kong and into China. Maybe you could say, thinking just about the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, and the companies that have gone into China, maybe through Hong Kong. What are the I guess very quickly, what are the industries that have the bulwark of that? And then what are these promising new fields? You told us climate change and clean energy. Are they going to be able to penetrate into there? So what's in the past, and what do you think? Where is the real low hanging fruit, if there are any, or relatively low hanging fruit?
Yeah, it is an interesting question, Scott. And I think as Louis alluded that there's already a basis in the Greater Bay Area for this trans-border activity. Hong Kong has been investing in Shenzhen forever. And so it's not like this is an entirely new thing, but there are still jurisdictional differences and legal differences. And, there's competition out there too. There's a historical degree of competition between Hong Kong and Shenzhen, and between Shenzhen and Guangzhou. Our cities jostle together. They compete for stuff. And it's not that different in China. I think the difference in China is you have the national government in the background saying this is a national priority. So I think maybe to a particular degree, people are rowing together to try to make it work. And I think it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's probably more complicated, a bit more challenging than would have been, let's say, 5 years ago. For, say, a Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area company or US company going into the region-oriented China in general, in part because of the more complicated political environment in China generally, and then the various kind of constraints here on the US side at the federal level around the actual or potential transfer of, say, key or sensitive technologies. So I think we've seen some narrowing of those windows. Nevertheless, I think from an outside standpoint, here in the San Francisco Bay Area, as Louis mentioned, I think Hong Kong is a really good entry point. The long established common law, the commercial law that's in place, the arbitration that's in place, the market environment, rated as one of the most open economies in the world. I think that makes it, and really a high level of respect for intellectual property. I think that makes it a comfortable place to try things out in a relatively small but very sophisticated market. And from Hong Kong, the relative security of Hong Kong, to see how this can play out in these different jurisdictions, recognizing that it's a work in progress, how they actually do end up reducing the internal barriers and cooperating. So I think, the fields that I was mentioning, just to get into a little bit more finely. So we're all, US and China facing issues around climate change. And so there's all these things that we could develop: greenhouse gas reduction, shoreline protection. We've got all these huge assets, rising sea level. How do you plan for that? Watershed management, clean energy that's related to that for sure. And that gets you into energy efficiency, zero emission vehicles, smart grid, distributed energy, green design, demand side management, smart appliances and lighting. A lot going on there. Healthcare, we both have aging societies, more so in China than here, but it's just a fact of life. So could you look at home robotics, something since COVID especially, telemedicine, medical devices and equipment, wearable devices around health. Those are pretty straightforward. And then mobility, I mentioned autonomous vehicles, things of that nature. You can do pilot testing of programs, deploying this technology, research on autonomous vehicle mobility. There's a lot there. And then the infrastructure, I think in Hong Kong especially, but in the region more generally, opens up a lot of possibilities. I think education is a field where we can do things together. And I think more broadly in health, you've got things that should be a pretty open field for collaboration, such as diagnostics, therapeutics, clinical trials, data analytics around health, personalized medicine. I mentioned wearables. So if you dig into these different fields, these are each areas where there is certain strength and infrastructure in Hong Kong and the China Greater Bay Area, but these are definitely priorities and strengths here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So they at least provide a number of channels to initially think about. And of course, I think fintech, Hong Kong is such a financial center, and a lot of the questions around enabling business growth, the movement of capital, insurance, cross-border insurance in the Greater Bay Area. You can think of a whole list of things where what we do in fintech potentially aligns with what's happening in Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area around fintech to enable that small business growth that you mentioned and business more generally.
Yeah, good. Thank you. No, very interesting. It's I'm ready to go invest in these special areas, but so at the end of Sean's presentation, he put some questions and issues on the board, Louis. And one of them was, will the whole of the Greater Bay Area be more than the sum of the parts? And, we ask this all the time here, right? Is San Jose competing against San Francisco? Does Oakland do something that Richmond or Vallejo, want to do? And are they competing against each other, or do they come together and become this bigger part? So do you think the whole of the GBA would be more than the sum of parts? Is there anything that we should look at what may make that true more and more in the future, or is constraining it? Or what do you think about that?
No, I do truly believe that it's just more than the sum of 11 cities. We all have different capacities. Hong Kong, for sure, we have a very strong financial strength, and we are very metropolitan. We have a huge number of international companies and their affiliations here in Hong Kong. And for example, in Shenzhen or in Guangzhou, they will have a stronger manufacturing base, and that could help Hong Kong or any other enterprising businesses. They would like to kickstart their journey in the Chinese mainland market, to put their idea into commercialization. So that we have a very clear and a very dedicated division of labor, so to speak. We have different areas of specialization. So as such, we believe that as long as we perform our own function well, and we are working in a complementarity with each other, then I don't see that we are actually, even with a certain degree or certain level of competition, I think that is a very healthy thing to emerge and to evolve when regional development is concerned. Just take a look at the San Francisco Bay Area, that different counterparts, different stakeholders are doing different things. Some different agglomeration or different clusters can be developed, to perform different functions. So altogether, it's going to be way beyond 1 + 1 = 2, and we are looking forward to see how these synergies can bring us to a higher level of collaboration and to be a success case, for other regional development.
So Sean, to take care of that, to take advantage of this greater, some of the parts of the whole Greater Bay Area, who does what here? We're such a decentralized country when it comes to economic policy. Can the federal government, can the state government, can Santa Clara County and San Francisco County, or what can we do to sort of foster more back and forth and investment that profits our companies and but then also expands this relationship?
Good question. I think that there's not much of a federal role here that we can expect to be positive. In fact, I think the federal role is rather on the negative side right now for most collaboration. And the question is, how do we respect that with that and still move forward in some way. So putting aside the federal role, I think, and this applies to U.S.-China relations more broadly too, I think there's an important role to be played going forward at the subnational level by entities, political entities, business entities, in both maintaining a dialogue between the U.S. and China and actually moving forward with sort of concrete business development. In other words, I think there's a political dialogue or conversation between Washington and Beijing, but if we put that into its own box, you have relationships between states and provinces, like California has a relationship with Jiangsu province. You have relationships between cities, like San Francisco has a relationship with Shanghai. You have business organizations, such as my own, the Bay Area Council, that actually has 3 offices in China, the main one being in Shanghai and others in Hangzhou, Nanjing, and Beijing that are there and have been there for about 15 years now to help companies from the Bay Area and California establish themselves and prosper, hopefully, in China. So I think this particular environment, there is, I think, an important facilitating role, sort of path opening role to be played by state government, by local governments, by business organizations in sort of supporting, especially business entities that are interested in exploring those opportunities. And also in helping them understand, so where are the obstacles, things you do not want to run into, and help guide them in pathways that actually will enable them to hopefully to prosper in China. So at the end, these are business decisions. Every business has got to figure out how comfortable are they operating vis-a-vis potential exposure of their intellectual property in China. What kind of vulnerability do they feel or do they not feel regarding how the central government may or may not choose to access their data? There's a range of questions where each company needs to figure out that in relation to what is still broadly felt to be a really strong market opportunity across China. So, but I do think at the subnational level, there's an important opportunity for entities of a variety, both public and private, to continue to facilitate business development wherever they can.
So I want to turn that right back to Louis. It's very interesting. It's what I mean. I was sort of thinking you'd go in that direction, and there's lots that our subnational governments can do. But Louis, if you could go talk to the Hong Kong Legislative Council into the executives there, then and get one new policy or one new investment, or what would you try to lobby for to try to make GBA go better and make Hong Kong Trade and Development Council even more effective? Is there something that could really you could grab onto and that could make businesses even thrive more? I know businesses in Hong Kong thrive, but could even thrive more.
First of all, thank you for your interesting question. I think we have always giving advice to our government whenever the GBA development, especially when export business are concerned. We are always having a close dialogue with the government. And just as I mentioned in my presentation or in my reply to your first question, that we have been doing quite a number of different studies, to help Hong Kong companies and also the policymakers to better understand how the business arena is feeling about or is experiencing across the border in the Greater Bay Area, and what obstacles or what challenges or any nitty-gritties that they would like to better harmonize or iron out okay, so that they can better facilitate, their business can be better facilitated. And if you will allow me, and actually I just heard, okay, earlier this week or perhaps late last week that we have, if you ask companies, especially foreign companies now based in Hong Kong, amid, especially under the COVID-19 pandemic, then most of them, okay, are lobbying or are urging the government to try to get a better reopening, border reopening for them, because quite a number or quite a high proportion of international affiliations here in Hong Kong, they are taking care not just their business in Hong Kong, but also across the border, particularly in southern China, including GBA. So we have already learned that some good news, and the first phase of border reopening arrangement was expected to allow individuals to travel to the Guangdong province without quarantine requirement if they had only been in Hong Kong for the past 14 days. Now, the scheme would give priority to business traveler and would be applicable to Hong Kong residents regardless of their nationality. So as such, foreign nationals based in Hong Kong will be covered. So while we don't yet have a very concrete timetable and roadmap when this scheme can really be put in place, but this arrangement as such will of course add to Hong Kong's many strengths for doing business with the Chinese mainland and especially the GBA. And I think this is really something most foreign business now based in Hong Kong would love to see.
Got it. Okay. COVID policy would across the world in many dimensions would probably facilitate business and in so many different ways. We're coming up to the top of the hour now. I'm just wondering, maybe Louis, if you have questions for Sean, or if Sean, you have questions for Louis. You guys have both gone back and forth, and and I know you know each other, and you coordinated your PowerPoints. Is there anything that you'd like to sort of say about the overall report in closing comments?
Yeah, of course, we would love to have Sean, okay, coming over to Hong Kong, yeah, to share the report, to speak, okay, about the reports, okay, not just in Hong Kong but also in the rest of the GBA, because it is actually our plan when we kickstart the project, but unfortunately, the pandemic didn't allow this to happen yet. But we will continue to monitor the situation, and we look forward to receiving him and receiving his team, and we look forward to maybe we'll have an update of the report, okay, just to follow the latest development.
Yeah, thanks, Louis. As Louis said, we had planned to do the release of this. May have been September, a long time ago, at a big conference in Hong Kong, and then that got moved back to November, December, and it's been moved back again and again. So I'm dying to get over there and talk to people on the ground and to kind of sort of explore with them what they're seeing on the ground. There's nothing like being there, especially when things are evolving as they are. So I would just encourage people to keep an eye on what's going on with the China Greater Bay Area. As I mentioned earlier, I had spoken in the past at maybe 3 different conferences in the region. I was asked to speak on it, and I didn't quite get it. Like, where's the bay? It's not like our bay. It's the big bay. But it really has evolved, consistently as a really interesting and potentially impactful concept, and as a potentially significant framework for companies from here looking to enter one of the major economic regions of China and to access those resources around financial services, manufacturing, and some of the technology as well. So I would just suggested people keep an eye on that. And for that, there's probably no better source than the Hong Kong Trade Development Council. As you could tell from Lewis's presentation, they're on top of that, and we look forward to continuing to develop the story.
Good. Yes, I second both of those final comments, and I do want to extend our thanks to our speakers, Sean Randolph from the Bay Area Economic Council, Louis Chan from the Hong Kong Trade and Development Council. We also want to thank you, the audience, for being with us today and your focus on this very, very important set of questions and relationships. The program you just watched and others like it, I've been told, will be posted on the club's website, www.commonwealthclub.org. And so you want to rewatch it or send it to somebody who might really benefit from this. There you go. And now, as moderator of this meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California, we're commemorating its 118th year of enlightened discussion. I'm going to take this meeting and adjourn it. So thank you one more time, Sean. Thank you to Louis, and thank you to the Commonwealth Club staff that made this possible and treated us so well and brought this to you. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Have a good morning, Louis.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.